Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sex in the Bull City. I'm Dr. Sophia Caudle, and I am joined today by my esteemed colleague, Alison Sanderson. And we're going to talk today about connection and the importance of connecting during this coronavirus crisis. So today is Tuesday, the 23rd, I believe. No, 24th, the 24th. And we're talking about connecting. So Alison and I, we've chatted a couple of times and exchanged some emails, and we met last week actually as a group, and we thought it would be really helpful for us to just have a very comfortable, relaxed conversation about how important connection is during this time of physical distancing. I'm purposefully not calling it social distancing because I think when we say social, that really implies something that is so important that we're not doing. And like what Alison and I are doing right now is social. So we are connecting with each other, and then hopefully we're connecting with more people. Y'all are either listening to us or watching us. And so this is a connection. So, but we're not physically connected. So she's where are you, in Apex?
I'm in Apex.
So Alison's in Apex, I'm in Durham. We're still connecting. We're just not physically together. And so I'm not calling it social distancing. I'm purposely saying physical distancing, so we can be clear about that. But this connection is really important to me that I'm having today with Alison. Like it helps affirm my tools and my emotional health to be able to process this with Alison, with someone like Alison. So this is a real connection for me that y'all will get to witness, but hopefully in this conversation that Alison and I have, you'll also learn some tools and skills that you can practice on your own, with your partner, with your family, with friends, with coworkers, with anyone that's in your life. But really also we're going to talk about some self-care that's going to be just for you and yourself. So anyway, we're going to have a conversation about connection. So Alison, thanks for being here with me.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. And I really like how you make that distinction between social distancing and physical distancing, because the term isolation comes up, right? When we talk about social distancing, we need to isolate ourselves, and it's not true, right? We need to physically isolate ourselves. However, we're not isolated. It's not important to isolate ourselves socially. We've got to connect, and hopefully this will give us the sense of how important it is. It's a human biological need to connect with one another. We're creatures of connection, and so it's just important for us to consciously connect in a way that is different than what we're used to. So yeah, this is a great opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm already like really digging what you're saying at the beginning. Conscious connection, consciousness is a word I've been using a lot this year. Being fully conscious and present is hard work. And like you're saying, we are just having to use different tools to connect. So we still can connect, but we have to be very conscious about it. So it may not be happening in the organic ways that we're used to, like when we might catch up with our friends on the weekend or something like that. Those things are not possible physically, although we still can do that through Zoom and through FaceTime and technology. And so, we just have to be more creative, and we have to be very conscious about it. So I really like that you're bringing up that word consciousness and conscious connection. Thanks for that.
Yeah, it's true. And I think we've all been accustomed to being around each other socially and at the workplace, wherever we are, but still we're not necessarily connecting. Right? We are in the presence of others, but are we really connecting? And I think this virus, this situation is giving us some pause to think, well, what is connection? And when I reach out to someone via Zoom or whatever, how do I want to connect with them? What's important? how, what do I need to ask myself? What do I need to ask about the other person? What do we need to share that feels good and right and supportive and is what I need as a person? Whereas before, I think that we took that for granted and we didn't really connect necessarily, So, just a little bit more about the conscientiousness of, how we connect and why.
Yeah,
You know?
and so I love that. So it sounds like what you're saying is, along with that being more conscious and the ways that we connect, it's also that maybe we're using like different parts of our brain almost to try to connect differently, because we used to think that just being around each other was enough, and we didn't
Right.
have to try so hard. It looked like it would sort of just happen. But was it really happening, or were we just in close proximity to each other? Two totally different concepts. Yeah.
Right. And I think with, technology and everyone's on their phones, I mean, there is this illusion of connection, but are we truly connecting? Um,
Yeah.
and I think now we're home now, and to think about like, what do we really need? What kind of connection do we need? Or and want? Do we need and want?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It brings up a lot of stuff,
It
really.
I know. Which way do we want this conversation to go? It can go 100 ways.
No.
Yeah. So I'm going to take my little ball of stuff and put it here, and then like I'm going to get back, because a whole bunch of stuff just came up, and so
Yeah. Yes. Smell it.
yeah.
It's coming up.
So, but I'm going to get to like, well, I first want to say like, let me get back to kind of like what we're doing here at Bull City. And as therapists, we're primarily doing therapy like this, with, through Zoom. We have a secure platform. And, I've been using Zoom for a long time with clients, when somebody needs an extra session and they're out of town, or we have 3 practices. So I've got people all over the state, which is great. But, just to sort of make this real for everyone, for anyone who's not sure if teletherapy is right for them, I've got to say that last week I had one of the very best sessions I've ever had with someone I've been seeing for 2 years. And
Wow.
he's a lovely young man, in his young 20s, and is used to being on technology a lot. Like that's how his brain works. And so we had a fabulous session, and we both talked about at the end of the session like what an amazing session it was for him. And it was just really great. And if ever I was not clear that we can do really phenomenal effective therapy through the computer or through other technology, that was just so lovely. Like it was someone I knew well. We had already built our rapport, had a great relationship, but it went even deeper because it was a forum that he was actually maybe a little more comfortable with. And it just was really great. And so I just kind of want to tell whoever's listening that that if you need support, this is really a great way to get it. And it's safe physically, and you'll be healthy also inside and out. So it's a good option, but you're right, Alison. He and I had to be fully present during that session. We had to both be very conscious about where we were going and what we were doing. And we were tracking each other and staying with each other. And we were both conscious. And so it was really, you do have to sort of potentially use different parts of your brain when we're doing this kind of connecting, because it's not like we're just sitting next to each other and are there.
Right. Right. Well, I'm so glad that session went well. I had an EMDR session recently via Zoom, and for folks who don't know what that is, it's a form of therapy that processes trauma, and it uses eye movements. And there was sort of a question, well, is this going to work online? And it worked beautifully, and the client processed a lot of trauma, maybe even more than what we've been able to do face to face. So even modalities like EMDR can be very effective via teletherapy.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
It does, yeah, and we're trying things. I'm actually going to be trying some encounter-centered couples therapy via teletherapy this week and next week, and I think it's going to go pretty well. So I'll report back on that. But so, what you and I are doing right now is a way of conscious connecting. And so, what are some things that we can highlight for people to be doing that can help them? First, how can we stay, let's start, I always like to start with myself. how can we
Mhm.
how can we be connected to ourselves? What ideas do you have?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question, because I think in our everyday, rat race, most of us are really not that connected to ourselves. And so this slowing down sort of forces us to notice what's happening inside of ourselves. And I think for a lot of people right now, there's tremendous anxiety and fear. Um, and it's very easy to get sucked into that negative spiral. People are spreading the fear and the anxiety like the virus itself. And so be aware if you are, if you're spreading that. And I think first we need to be conscious of what thoughts we're having, what we're feeding ourselves in terms of information, and to notice that we don't have to identify with those fearful and anxious thoughts. Yes, we acknowledge it, that there's fear, that there might be fear, and that's natural and normal, and that we are all experiencing that world globally. I mean, I think it's just a human response to have some fear and anxiety about what's happening. And we don't have to run with it. We don't have to identify it. So sitting with it and intentionally noticing it and then letting it go, and then connecting to a deeper place of centeredness and groundedness and peacefulness that we all are capable of connecting to. So that when we do connect with others, it's coming from that place. And I think it'll be a much more genuine connection that will be spreading that centeredness and connection, um, instead of the fear. And I think for those of us that have children at home, it's very important for us to be grounded so that they have a sense of safety. And they're going to mirror what our mood is, right? Even if we're not aware of it. So if we are have this underlying sense of fear and anxiety, our kids are going to be reflecting that, and they're already hyper. They're going to be acting out even more. But if we can have some peace and centeredness, they are going to be reflecting that more too. And it's easier said than done. It's not always easy, especially with young children at home. It's very, very stressful. And if your partner or spouse is home too, I mean, you're in a small space. And yeah, so taking this time for self-care, and like we were talking about earlier, Sophia, if you normally have a certain amount of time for self-care, double it, maybe triple it, right? But really take that seriously so that you can connect yourself to a healthy, grounded place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like everything that you said, but I was thinking that's easier said than done.
True.
So, getting to that grounded, centered place, um, while acknowledging fear, I think that takes time to get to. But the way that the way to get there, at least for me, is to for me right now, because there are other times I use other tools, but right now these are the tools that are working for me, is increasing my exercise. So I'm doing lots and lots of spinning on my Peloton bike, which I love. And I'm really internalizing the positive messages that I hear from them and other places, and I'm not allowing in the negative messages that I read online, or that that I might hear. And I'm like you. I don't watch the news unless it's like, oh, I want to know what's going on with the coronavirus. I'm going to watch the news, and then I listen. I do what I need to do, but I don't bring it in. I
Right.
listen. I know after I do this. Okay, move on. And really beefing up my self care, meditating for longer periods of time, maybe more than once if I can fit it in a day. Those are the things that let me get to that place of acknowledging my fear, like, whoa, I am really worried about finances. That's been like that's my little girl worry from when I was younger. And so it's like this whole, COVID-19 is just one big trigger for everybody, like all the time. So
Right.
it's like, for me to be able to be present with my family and clients, I've got to be taking care of me first. And so it's just doing more of the self-care so that I can still be in my fear and know that it's present, but I don't have to act on it. I can feel it, and I can still eventually get grounded, but allow myself to actually feel that for as long as needs to happen. Because
Right.
I think it's important to know that during a time of crisis, it may not be good enough just to acknowledge the fear and let it go.
Sure.
We're going to keep bumping up against it. So just allow it to be felt and then let it go when it wants to go is kind of what I do.
Right. No, I think everything you said is great, and process that fear with someone. Someone who can hold space for you and isn't going to judge you or tell you to calm down, that you're overreacting. Someone who can just be present with you and witness you as you share what you're scared about. And if you don't have anyone in your life, I mean, a therapist is a perfect person to hold space for you as you share what's coming up. And sure, there's fear about the virus, but like you mentioned, it is bringing up everything for people. It's bringing up our marriages. It's bringing up dealing with our kids, maybe special needs children. It's bringing up our finances. I mean, it's bringing up absolutely everything and really forcing us to be with these important things that are very easy for us to push aside in our normal day experience. But I like how you are doubling down on your meditation and exercise, of course. It's so important. But I was thinking something else was coming up. Oh, yeah, just that we're all going to be experiencing different levels of fear at different times. And some people are naturally more anxious than others. And there is no one right way to be responding to this. And one day we may be totally cool, and the next day we might begin to unravel. And I think having patience with our loved ones, if their level of anxiety is a lot higher than yours, so like I was saying before, just be able to hold space for them and not judge how they're responding, because there's no precedent for this, right? And that's really a sign of compassion and love, to just hold space with someone where they are without judgment. And I think, for someone who's trying to keep it in and keep things under control, and then they have a spouse who's really upset and anxious, there's a tendency to say, calm down, calm down. I can't handle that level of anxiety right now. I don't want to deal with that in myself. So I'm gonna sort of deny your anxiety. And that just perpetuates disconnection and turmoil in a relationship. So just acknowledging that we have different ways, and that's okay, you know? So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, some ways. And we were also talking before we started, we might do another video podcast just about couples in the next week or so, because this really is, I mean, you specialize in couples. I do as well. We do a lot of couples work, but the couples relationship is like a little mini example of all of our strengths and assets and weaknesses and triggers. And so it's like,
Yeah,
that's everything that's
we're
coming.
in a fishbowl.
And that's just
All these
like,
things we didn't like about our spouse are like in our face.
yeah, and all the
It's
things that
crazy.
we know we don't do well are like, I just keep bumping up against that also, and it's like, oh, come on, am I still doing this? So we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later. But you kept saying hold space, that's like a therapy type word. Can you, I mean, phrase, can you explain, like, what does that mean to a regular average person? How do we hold space, and how can we say that so that people can understand what they can offer to anybody that's around them?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think well, actually, I think it could mean different things to different people. But for me, holding space is really gifting someone with your presence, with your unconditional regard, compassion, and just being present for whatever that person brings, and not allowing what they say to trigger you, right? And if you do get triggered, well, that's information. What is that in me that's coming up, that I need to be present with, that I need to hold space for? So, for me, holding space is being present, and it's really a loving gift, to give to somebody and to allow them a space to be genuine, that they don't have to hide their feelings, that they will be okay um, in your presence. And it's a safe place. Um, and so, yeah, that's what it is for me. And that's what I try to bring. Well, I try to bring that to everyone in my life, but especially with my clients, right? Because many people have never really had anybody
Yeah.
hold space for them. Even even their caregivers growing up, or even their spouse may not know what that is. And
Yeah.
so for some people, to have someone hold space for you can feel very vulnerable, right? Where you find the safety and really a certain amount of courage to be able to open up fully, in the presence of someone else holding space.
Yeah, I can see how that would take, I mean, that's going to take practice getting used to that, because that is going to be really unsafe for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Especially, during a time like this when, a lot of us, I mean, most of us are getting triggered by our old stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's just bringing up attachment wounds and all of our attachment issues. Yeah, in all different ways. But yeah, it's really nice. I really like what you're saying, that it's so important to be able first to hold that space and that non-judgmental space for ourselves. So it's like, oh, my financial worries are getting triggered. Let me just be aware of that and let that happen. Like, okay, it's happening, there it is. And just honor it to happen, allow it to happen, instead of being like, oh, don't feel that, but just be like, I know where this comes from. Okay, I feel like I'm getting poked with all those triggers, and just allowing that to happen in an understanding, caring, loving way to ourselves, so that
Right.
then we have so much more to give to our families, our friends, our clients, whoever's in our life. But that's so important. I mean, for me, it all gets back to self-care. That, like, without self-care, for me and my recovery and my work and everything, just it goes down the tubes. Like, first I've got to, like, do my work and take care of me so I can take care of others in the ways
Exactly.
that's appropriate for me to take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, we've talked about a lot of deep ways to connect. Let's talk about, I think that for families or couples or even people who are living alone, there's probably some really basic ways of connecting that, with
Right.
the age of technology, we've probably gotten away from, like board games, like,
Right.
playing cards, really simple things that we can do with our families or our partners, and just that's those are great connecting activities that I think we used to take for granted. Like when you and I were younger, probably that's like all we did. We didn't have technology like we have now. But let's talk for a few minutes about some basic things that we can do just to connect with the people around us, either face to face or through technology. What are some ideas you have?
Well, I mean, some of the things like you just said, playing games with kids. I think cooking can be a really great way to connect and be creative and to feed ourselves. And so, we've been cooking a little bit more. My 16-year-old son, he loves to bake desserts. So he likes to bake fancy desserts, right? It's like, I don't know where how this came about, but so I think he's working on cream puffs right now. He's researching how to make cream puffs,
Oh, wow.
and he made a creme brulee. So he likes these sort of gourmet desserts. So I mean, that's just one example. I think getting outside in the yard. I mean, there's so many I don't know, creative ways I'm sure people can come up with at home. And I think there might be a tendency because of the anxiety to get into doing mode, like what can I get done around the house? And yes, I think it's important to do the things maybe we've been putting off, but not to get stuck in the doing, because we don't always connect really well in the doing, exploring the being versus the doing, right? Because we really connect the best when we are, being, or being and doing, cooking together and being present in that way,
Yeah.
right? um,
Yeah, because projects can be just another way of numbing out.
right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're just in the doing, we're not in the being. We're just checking out, turning off, and cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really, really good distinction. Yeah, but some of the things that I think are helpful to connect. I mean, surprisingly, it's some of the things that I already do, and that I encourage my clients to do. We just like invite others in. So I'm not that creative. So it's like meditating together.
Okay.
Yeah, having the guided meditation allowed so everyone can hear it and everybody comes and gets comfortable.
Sure.
Praying together is another great thing that people can do. And all of these things can actually
Exercising.
exercise
At home exercise, sure.
for sure. And then you mentioned actually a second ago, like going out in the yard, like gardening. Like what a great time to create a garden together. I mean, even weeding is actually fun, although that can be a little more of the numbing. But I can't like create things, but I love weeding. Like it makes me feel so
Mhm.
satisfied to like pick up weeds. So
Right.
yeah.
Clear a space. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I like that too. I think even, finding a space in your home that this can be your little sanctuary, find a space, a room in itself, or just a corner of a room where you can light candles, or maybe have some essential oils, or just create a sort of a peaceful center, where you can have your meditation, or you can bring the family in and say, we're just going to calm ourselves and center ourselves, and get creative with that space. Bring in flowers that are blooming from outside, or, just your imagination is the limit, and have just an intentional calm space.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that could be done together, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, oops, sorry, that was a loud noise. My ring hit the table. Another thing that I was thinking, like, you know, listening to music or playing music together, making videos.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
there's like, if you have little kids at home, a friend of mine was showing me this website. I can't remember what it is now, but there's like a ton of virtual, gosh, what do you call it? Virtual tours, but like when you, oh, school trips, like virtual trips you can do, like zoos,
Oh,
museums. I forget what she was calling it. But then I think the other thing that's really important is, how to use technology like we're doing now to connect with people. So, we don't
right.
have to use this just for work. This is a great way to connect with families, friends, and families, all our friends, and people that this is a great time. Like it's sad that we don't do this all the time, but why not use this time to connect with people who we don't live near? Like we should be doing that all the time when we think, if we think about it. But
Right.
using technology, to really help us connect.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people connect via text or email, phone calls some, but not as much. And I think this is giving us an opportunity to do just that, connect in a more personal way, even though it's remote. And I think it'll become a new normal for people, um, instead of, just texting here and there or social media. So it is much more intimate, um, than those other ways. So you're
Yeah.
right about that.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think it's more intimate. I mean, I think texting is great to make plans and to kind of keep up with
Oh,
people for sure. But I mean, yeah, like when we met last week as a group, I mean, I was like, oh, I really, it was so nice to like see everybody's face and, know
yeah,
that everybody was healthy and we still got to chat and kind of catch up. And so,
right,
yeah, like using technology for a positive way. I mean, I'm so used to, we work in sex and love addiction, and we have a lot of porn addiction here in the practice. So I'm used to technology being not our friend, and so it's
right,
really a great way to remember that. Hey, this is really fabulous, and what a gift this is that we have this wonderful resource to us during this awful pandemic.
right. Well, and I think it's going to be really interesting when this is all over how society changes and how our use of technology changes. Um, and just our maybe a greater understanding of how our needs have gone unmet, and what connecting means, for everybody. So I don't, it'll just be interesting what changes take place. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think it will be interesting, and we're just going to have to all, you know, keep our notes and figure out what's best for everybody. And, hopefully people will learn some things. We'll all learn something about ourselves that'll give us more awareness as to, how we need to meet our own needs when we're out of this and all this is over, and how we can better show up for ourselves and for people that are in our lives, in our relationships.
Oh, you're breaking up. Okay, we're good.
My back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna not tempt fate if we're losing our internet. And Zoom has been, everything's been so busy that I think that it has been breaking up the past couple days. Okay, Allison, thanks so much for chatting, and I will talk
Sure.
to you soon. We'll talk again next week. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks. Bye.